"Just trust me," he whispered, his voice steady but urgent. "Kiss me, he's watching." I should have walked away. Everything in my life up to that moment had been built on careful choices, quiet decisions, and staying invisible when things felt uncertain. I wasn't the kind of person who stepped into someone else's story without knowing the ending. And yet, something in his eyes, calm, kind, and strangely reassuring, made me pause instead of retreat. "Then let's make it real," I heard myself say, surprising even my own heart. And in that single moment, everything changed. His name was Oliver Hayes. I didn't know that yet, of course. At the time, he was just a stranger standing too close to me in a crowded bookstore café, his hand hovering near mine as though asking permission without words. The place was warm and softly lit, filled with the scent of roasted coffee and paper pages, and yet there was a tension in the air that didn't belong. I had come there to escape a long day, to lose myself in a novel and forget about deadlines and expectations. But Oliver hadn't come for escape. He had come for something else entirely. And somehow, I had become part of it. The man he said was watching us sat across the room, pretending to read a newspaper. I hadn't noticed him at first, but once Oliver said the words, I couldn't unsee him. His gaze flickered up too often, lingering just a second too long. "Who is he?" I asked quietly. "Someone who thinks I owe him something," Oliver replied, his tone calm but firm. "But I don't want trouble. I just need him to believe I've moved on, that I'm not alone." I studied him for a moment. There was no fear in his expression, only a quiet determination, and something deeper, something kind. "You could have asked anyone," I said. "I know," he answered softly. "But you looked like someone who wouldn't pretend halfway." I let out a small breath, caught between disbelief and something else I couldn't quite name. "All right," I said finally. "But we're doing this properly." And so we did. It wasn't dramatic or exaggerated. There were no grand gestures or sweeping motions. Just a simple, gentle moment where two strangers leaned into a shared understanding. It felt real not because of what we did, but because of why we did it. There was kindness in it. Trust, even. When we pulled away, the man with the newspaper had already stood up and left. Just like that. The tension dissolved, leaving behind something unexpected, a quiet connection neither of us had planned. "Thank you," Oliver said, stepping back slightly. "I know that was unusual." "That's one way to describe it," I replied, unable to stop a small smile from forming. "Do you always solve problems like that?" "Only when I meet someone brave enough to help," he said. We sat down together after that, not out of obligation, but because neither of us seemed ready to walk away just yet. His story unfolded slowly, like pages turning in a book you didn't want to rush. Oliver had once been part of a business partnership that had turned complicated. Not dishonest or dangerous, just complicated in the way human relationships sometimes are when expectations and misunderstandings collide. The man watching him, Daniel, had been a former colleague who couldn't accept that Oliver had chosen a different path. There were no threats, no harm, just persistence, pressure, and a refusal to let go of something that had already ended. "I didn't want confrontation," Oliver explained. "Sometimes people just need to see that you've moved forward. That your life has changed. And you thought I could help show that?" I asked. He nodded. "You seemed grounded. Real. Not someone who would turn it into a scene." I laughed softly. "I suppose that's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me in a bookstore." We talked for hours after that. About small things at first, books, work, favorite places to visit on quiet weekends. Then deeper things, the kind that only come up when two people realize they're safe to be honest. Oliver worked as a community architect, designing spaces meant to bring people together, libraries, parks, shared centers. He believed that the places we build shape the way we connect. That kindness could be designed into everyday life. I worked in education, helping young adults find confidence in their own voices. I believed people grew best when they felt seen and supported. In a way, we were both builders. Just in different ways. "What made you stay today?" he asked at one point. "You mean after your unexpected request?" I smiled. He nodded. I thought about it for a moment. "Because you didn't ask for help out of fear. You asked because you wanted peace. That matters." He seemed to consider that, his expression softening. "Most people assume strength looks loud," he said. "But sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's just choosing not to fight. And sometimes," I added, "it's trusting a stranger." He smiled at that. Days turned into weeks after that first meeting. We didn't plan it. There was no agreement or expectation. Just a natural rhythm that formed between us. Coffee became routine. Conversations became longer. Silences became comfortable. And somewhere along the way, what had started as a moment of pretending turned into something real. Oliver never saw Daniel again. Whatever message had been sent that day in the café had been enough. The past had quietly stepped aside. But the future had just begun. One afternoon, as we sat in the same café where everything had started, Oliver looked at me with that same calm steadiness I had noticed on day one. "Do you ever think about that moment?" he asked. "The bookstore?" I replied. He nodded. "All the time," I admitted. It felt like the beginning of something I didn't understand yet. "And now?" he asked. I met his gaze, feeling a warmth settle in my chest. "Now it feels like the moment everything made sense." He reached for my hand, not hesitantly this time, but with quiet certainty. "No pretending?" he asked. "No pretending," I smiled. And in that moment, there was no audience, no watcher, no reason to prove anything. Just two people who had chosen kindness over fear, trust over doubt, and connection over distance. Sometimes life doesn't begin with grand plans or perfect timing. Sometimes it begins with a simple choice, to help, to trust, to say yes when everything inside you says to walk away. That day in the café, I didn't just step into someone else's story. I found my own. And it started with a whisper, a moment of courage, and a decision to make something real. Because the most unexpected beginnings often lead to the most meaningful endings, and sometimes, all it takes is one brave moment to turn a stranger into someone who changes your life forever.